It seems that this was a place for rituals to ensure the prosperity of Cahokia through the seasons. Today's Choctaw Indians still acknowledge the beliefs of their ancestors by performing this ancient spiral snake dance at sunrise. The rising sun aligns the posts with different landmarks on the site. On the summer solstice, the longest day of the year, the sun rises in line with Monk's Mound. Bob Hall, himself part Native American, is an anthropologist who was one of the first excavators of the Woodhenge.
I feel that these post circles constituted more than just an observatory. The center pole has especially fascinated me because there was an association with mourning that is in connection with the mortuary ceremonies. There were rituals in which the renewal of the earth was combined with the resurrection of the dead person.
Yet Native American tribes still trace their heritage to Cahokia. Joe Watkins is from the Choctaw tribe, which has its geographical roots in the Mississippi Valley.
Quite a few Choctaw, quite a few southeastern Indians believe that Cahokia could have been the grand homeland, the place from where we all came before we were differentiated tribes. It's like the way the Palestinians view the Holy Land, that it's where we started, where our genesis began.
We are the Choctaw, the Muskogee Creek, the Seminole, the Chickasaw, and the Cherokee. We are the children of the mound builders and heirs to a civilization that followed drifting river trade routes from the Gulf of Mexico all the way to Canada. The town of Tahlequah in northeastern Oklahoma has only a recent place in our history, born from the Cherokee Trail of Tears, but it is a symbol of our survival. Today it is the capital of the Cherokee Nation of Oklahoma, a fitting place for representatives of our tribes to come together to discuss our histories and our future.
And I don't like that image. People can deal with us if we're in museums, but they can't deal with us today.
Wilma Mankiller is the principal chief of the Cherokee Nation.
It's always been my opinion that the true history of American Indians have never been told. One reason I believe is it's dynamic, it changes. Our people have always been adaptive to change, and through this process it's very difficult to capture the true history of our people.
Ken York lives on Choctaw tribal land in Philadelphia, Mississippi. He teaches the Choctaw language at Mississippi State University.
I think histories, if they are to be representative, have to develop is that this record of people who didn't go away, that we're still there and living according to values and traditions that have been there forever.
Alan Cook is a Muskogee Creek historian from Holdenville, Oklahoma.
I think that if you wed a living historical account to a living culture, then you are producing a narrative that makes sense to Indian people.
Gary Whitedeer is a Choctaw artist and historian from Ada, Oklahoma.
In a sense, we're all consumers of history, and we go to the history store and we buy a dozen eggs of history. But when we get home and we open that carton, we find that there are only 10 eggs in there. And what happened to the story of the Cherokees, of other Indian people? What happened to the stories of women? Where are those voices?
Sarah Parker is Cherokee Narragansett. She is a professor of American Studies at the University of California at Santa Cruz.
One of the things that we come up against so frequently is the idea that all Indian tribes, including peoples in the Southeast, were nomadic, that they moved from place to place. If you look at the history of southern Appalachia and Cherokee residency there's records of people inhabiting that region back at least 10,000 years.
Know this about the land. It was not India, and it was definitely not empty. We welcome the great floods of the Mississippi River to restore and deepen our agricultural lands each summer. And with the wealth that nature provided, we built large cities like Cahokia near modern-day St. Louis, a planned city of 10,000 built around 100 ceremonial and burial mounds.
All the southeastern tribes, our old customs were to bury our people in mounds, great mounds, and to also bury things with them. We all go back to where we started. And our tradition tells us that we spend our life starting on Mother Earth. We're born on Mother Earth. We pass on, and then our bones are reinterred in Mother Earth. And so this cycle of life is really like the cycle of the human spirit.
The mounds in relationship to the study of astronomy was such that the entrance of the buildings would always face the east. We call that Hashi Akucha, which is where the sun rises, and the rays, of course, bring warmth. The warmth of the rays hit Mother Earth, and plants, animals, and even human beings begin to grow.
There are people in the South today, many of them wealthy folks, doctors and lawyers and even politicians, who are in the dirty business of digging up our Indian people. And the reason they're digging up our Indian people is because of the things they were buried with. Pots and projectile points, spear points, and so forth. There seems to be a growing black market for these items, so they are dug up and they're being sold.
We believe that the earth is our mother, and in order to recognize that, certain people built mounds. And they do this to recognize the mother. During pregnancy, you see the mother change. So in recognizing what we call Tik Inhashi, the Women's Month, there were times when they built mounds, and they were small mounds, and it was more of a recognition of the female rather than burial or ceremonial.
For hundreds of years, scientists refused to believe that these great earthworks could have been built by Indians. They attributed the mounds to Viking explorers, to the lost tribes of Israel, even to the notion that our country had once been populated by a race of supermen, white men who built the mounds before they founded the great civilizations of Mexico. Scientists finally decided that the mounds had been engineered by Native Americans, but that the Mississippian culture had collapsed and disappeared in the 1500s. But we have always known that these were our relations. Our oral histories tie us to the mound builders and beyond.
The migration to where we are now perhaps took thousands of years, I'm not sure, but it took a long time for our people to get here. Every time they would make a stop, they would put the sacred pole in the ground. But the next day, as an example, this pole would lean towards the direction that the people are supposed to go. The pole would give them direction, and the people would march again. And people brought everything with them, including the bones of the ancestors. And the feeling, the understanding that I get from that is that they would never return to their place of origin as far as the migration is concerned. When they reached what we now know as Mississippi River, they planted a pole in the ground. It's our understanding that a storm came, biblical proportions, and yet the next day, this pole stood straight up. And since that time, we've always been where we are today, our ancestral homeland in Mississippi. Tabitit abachikiyahe. Tabitit abachikiyahe. Our people, when they built the mounds, they put this sacred pole down. and the spirit gave them this song, and as long as they sing the song, the sacred pole would always stand straight toward the heaven. Tabi itit aba chinki ahe.
We tattooed our bodies and etched our art into copper and seashell ornaments. We celebrated the relationship of our clans to native animals in beautifully carved stone. We played a spectacular game of stickball on huge fields near our ceremonial grounds, the first American baseball. On the eve of European exploration, we lived in stable villages, in cane and plaster or log homes. We had peace communities. We held a wide expanse of land in common with many tribes for hunting and fishing, and this the Europeans never understood. From the beginning, they could not see what was here and did not understand that our sense of place did not end at our porch steps. They brought their God and their belief in property and their dogs of war. Bartolomé de las Casas kept a diary when Hernando de Soto's expedition passed through the southeast in 1539.
The Christians, with their horses, swords, and spikes, began to carry out massacres and strange cruelties against the Indians. They attacked towns and spared neither children, the aged, nor pregnant women. The people were fed to dogs, skewered, and burned alive. All this did my own eyes witness. The cries of so much spilled blood reached all the way to heaven.
The people who are descendants of the group that lived around what is now Mobile say that they were treated very harshly by the Spaniards almost immediately. They were very demanding. They wanted not only food and shelter and clothing, but also the women. Of course, this did not go very well with the leadership at the time. And you have to understand, one of the leaders in one of the villages was also a woman leader. One of the chiefs that was mentioned in the chronicles and was highly respected was Tuscaloosa, black warrior. He somehow knew that De Soto was here not in cause of friendship and peace. He would send runners to other villages that they were going to visit, and they prepared an attack, a surprise attack on Hernando de Soto's expedition. The Choctaws did some damage. They injured a lot of Spaniards. Of course, there were a lot of Choctaws that died. Afterwards, the Chickasaws took care of Hernando de Soto.
War stories often hide the more ruthless but less documented threats to our survival. The seduction of trade and the intermarriage of Indian women and white colonists turned our world upside down long before settlers stole our land.
The women, especially after about 1760, were squaws. They were denied the position and the power and the autonomy that they held within their own nations by these incoming whites who simply did not understand a balance between male and female.
The Choctaw songs and the Chickasaw songs and so forth, for a long time they had gone away or gone underground because of religious persecution. So we started hearing these songs again and seeing these dances again as they started coming out. I kept an ear out for these things and got to a point to where now people rely on me to an extent to know those songs and to know those dances. What they call, I guess in English, like a chanter to an extent that I'm able to help carry these things on. A lot of our southeastern dances, too, you would notice. There's a locking of arms and elbows, a holding of hands. Our people dance as a group together. That community of spirit, that communalism, that desire to be part of a whole, taking your identity and cues from your traditional community. That's very much in evidence in our songs and dances, and even in our designs.
There's been recent interest in revival of our stickball games.
And the ones that we see in Native American populations, both living today and in these Hopi cemeteries, were the mitochondrial lineages A, B, C, D, and X. Were the mitochondrial lineages A, B, C, D, and X.